Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to The Shift. We're doing a kind of a different episode today, a little mini podcast. And I also want to point out that my camera has downgraded since last week's episode because I did not rent out a camera from the UCF library. So I apologize for that. But a lot of things have been happening this week that I wanted to talk about on the podcast. And I really wanted to hear from Austin about how he feels about certain things, just so we can have a bit of discourse. And I want to start off with the elections in Virginia that happened this week, where in a Democratic state, plus 10, which means Democrats should have won the election by a landslide, they lost to a Republican who ran a kind of Trumpish style campaign based on critical race theory and other culture war issues. I wanted to talk about this because the ideas that are now becoming mainstream in the right-wing circles and even some parts of the left-wing circles are not pertaining to materially helping people. And a lot of these issues that are being discussed are now revolving around kind of petty grammatical dramas. So one thing I thought about today, Austin, was all this talk about critical race theory and all
There's
this
a
shit
lot of
about
it. There's a lot of talk about it.
all the shit about the left taking over the academic circles. And I was thinking today, I'm in my entire time in public school, I barely learned about the true history of America and the true struggles of people of color, and specifically African American folks that were brought over for slavery. I barely learned about how brutal and vicious it was in high school, and it was mostly glossed over to get to Martin Luther King and how he fixed everything.
Hey, come on, they touch base. All right, they touch base.
They
Cut us some
do.
slack. They touched base. Nah, I honestly don't think we should cut them any slack because, dude, I remember never hearing about anything related to Black history, civil rights movement more than 2 days in a row every school year. Maybe tops like maybe a week of class in total. So it's ridiculous. Just get to the point. You don't want people to know about the reality of living circumstances that colored people go through living in the United States. Don't be an idiot. Don't willfully be ignorant.
And I feel like that's what the educational system has imposed, is a blind eye to the truth of the history that transpired over the past hundreds of years. I remember my only time really hearing about Malcolm X in public school, who I give credit to for really opening my eyes and giving me a little bit of a better perspective on these racial issues. We learned about him via a paragraph on one day of class, and we hear just yeah, he was a member of the Nation of Islam, he was an activist, and he was assassinated. Okay, move on. And they spend so much time making us celebrate people like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, and even sometimes Abraham Lincoln, who, while he ended slavery, he did it because that was a way to economically reinforce the North and the South so that the United States can be a united power. He didn't want the southern states to secede because that's going to hurt the United States as a whole.
Yeah, and that whole narrative is painted in a very sensitive way to link him to uplift him as founding father, tall, patriarchy and like that whole lens of seeing things, where then you see stories that are unheard for the reasons that you don't want people to know the truth. Like, come on, you can't hide people from the truth, and you
And
can't hide the
yeah,
truth from people either.
do you think they have been hiding the truth?
I mean, they've tried their best. It's a little ongoing process. It's just like people realizing that like their job titles not don't define who they are. Like, just because you're tied down to like a job doesn't mean you shouldn't be a good person.
Mm-hmm. I'm like, I'm just, it frustrates me that, like how we were talking about before the show, that like real substantive issues are not being addressed. Instead, it's just such like comical media, like points, you know, to get people like kind of hooked on the story that doesn't really help them, but it still gets them to like something has to be done about critical race theory while they're like they go back home and they have to ration their insulin, you know. Like I was talking to somebody today and I was like, when's the last time you like look up and you see your mom like rationing her insulin because she can't afford it, and you start saying to yourself, oh, these fucking like pronouns, that's the issue, you know, like our attention's being so diverted.
Yeah, that's like a theory of what's it called? Message construction. Like messages should relate directly. And that's what advertisements never do. It's always something new, something completely different like target audience, different um different strategies from like consumer to producer, producer to consumer. And it just never breaks that formula, even when it flows into like news and stuff. Like it's always just like an intent to keep your eyes on the subject at hand, but then it switches to something else before problems get solved.
You're a communications major, so like what, how do you like see, hmm how do you see like the advertising of like these issues being like utilized in such a way to kind of get the people hooked?
Ooh, the advertisements make people feel like everything is in their best interest. Like, and then there's a trust formed with your phone, with your screen, and people take advantage of like that, relying on like truthful information to then pull into their own experiences and their own points for their own reward and personal gain. But I think the most powerful people that have been taken down in history is because they don't use their platform for their own personal gain. They use it for the interest of like all people, like
Yeah,
the objectivity.
that's really like interesting that you brought that up. Like they make it seem as if it's in their best interest, you know, to like talk about these things, because once you do that, it doesn't make you think it's important to like raise the minimum wage or reduce prescription drug prices. You know,
Yeah,
it kind
because
of,
it's in their personal interest to get more money in capitalism. It's like in a capitalistic society, they're not wrong for that. But when someone's using the same strategy, but with for not their personal interest or for their personal interest, but to help all people, it's like you can really see the root of evil is how people like want more money, but it's like not distributing wealth properly, and like people having generational setbacks due to like inequality and just like injustice. Just so many layers of like bad intentions and like bad power usage. And it all stems from like patriarchy, really.
Yeah. That that is really important to discuss because that's another thing I didn't learn in high school, which is the general like the generational setbacks that um specifically like black people have to go through. Like white people have controlled the dominant media narratives for hundreds of years, and they've had the opportunity to start like massive businesses that they've been able to grow and have those things accumulate wealth, and with that wealth they've been able to buy power. And like that has not, the generational setbacks that people of color have had to face have not been acknowledged like fully. I think when I tell people about like, especially white people, that like, dude, systemic racism is real. Like black people don't own the means of production in the way that white people do. They just say like, well, like they can just pull themselves up by their bootstraps and work hard and then they'll be able to do it.
Yeah, and then it's like, why is that the narrative now that we're like all equally starting from the same place when literally all people of color have done in the United States since we've been here is either been here first or been taken from somewhere else and brought here and forced to like build up all the like means of how we live in this world today. Like hard labor, like the real blue collar work
Mm-hmm.
without resources, without capital, and then still manage with all those hurdles and obstacles to still be neck and neck and
Yeah.
competing with like all these different hurdles and different
Mm-hmm.
things to overcome every day still. Just like being characterized as something and knowing already that you're going to be seen this way in society, then having to overcome that and stay positive through it all and take care of your mental health and want better for like people who come after you because of knowing how bad the suffering is. It's crazy. It's crazy to ignore all of that and then act like critical race theory is more important than like guns flowing into like urban communities or like people not having free health care or like pharmaceuticals upcharging prices or like communities not having clean water.
I feel like I want you to just keep talking so I can just keep listening.
Dude, it's like, when does the real change happen? You see people doing it on their own. Like you have someone like making their own foundation, making efforts to provide people with clean water. Like Jaden Smith, water box, perfect example. He's been doing that for how long? And like, you don't see that on the news, bro. They should be talking about that shit every day. Like, oh, Jaden put up a new water box. Then that will encourage people to like get behind a movement that's like actually grassroots.
And the grassroots is like, the grassroots movements are so important, man. On a lighter note, but also still pertaining to the topic, there was a candidate who I canvassed for. I drove down to St. Petersburg, Florida, multiple times to knock on doors for him, and he is a Democratic Socialist named Richie Floyd, who is a person of color who just won the seat. He fucking won, and he's the first Democratic Socialist on the city council board or position in Florida in 100 years. So like,
Wow,
he didn't,
100 years,
yeah,
dude.
and he barely got any coverage in the media, you know, and he won by a few hundred votes, and he didn't take any corporate money. Like, we, the people of this grassroots movement, were out there like knocking on doors, and I had friends making phone calls for him for like
Dude, that's what's up.
every Tuesday and Thursday for multiple hours for like weeks, and he still barely edged it out. Like
Yeah.
the powers that be and the established interests do every single thing they can to make sure that anything that actually helps people and does good is not going to get through. This Build Back Better plan, which is another reason why the Democrat in Virginia might have lost, went from $3.5 trillion with free community college, Medicaid expansion, universal pre-K, so many benefits. It went from 3.75 trillion to 1.7 trillion, or 3.5 trillion to 1.7 trillion, all because two Democrats didn't want some of the provisions to be in there because their donors were telling them to pull them out. And bro, get this, man. This is a senator called Kyrsten Sinema, and I don't know if you remember when the minimum wage was like a big issue. It's still a big issue, but like when they were voting on it in early 2021, a senator from Arizona called Kyrsten Sinema went to go vote for Arizona on the minimum wage, and she like knelt down with her thumb down like this, like a Yas queen. Literally, bro, it's despicable. If you want to see the video, I can show you. But the $15 minimum wage increase literally just won in Arizona. And she was out there like voting against it, like not representing her people at all. My bad. Your camera cut out. Yo.
Sorry, I had like a horrible audio issue. My laptop just connected to my earbuds, then connected to like my apartment speaker system. Then I got it back here. So you're gonna have to repeat that for me. But I missed the whole thing. So yeah, my
Okay.
fault.
Did you hear what I said about the minimum wage, or did it cut out?
It cut out right when you said her name. You said Kristen Cinema.
Yeah,
Okay.
bro. She voted against raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And this week, Arizona, which is a state she represents, voted to raise the minimum wage. The people voted to raise the minimum wage, and she voted against raising the minimum wage. It passed.
How can she vote against the people? How's that a power? How's that a power, bro? I swear my A push high school teacher like was the best teacher. And he probably would know about that. Like he probably has something to say about that. Shout out Mr. Smith from Northern High School.
I had a Mr. Smith in elementary school who like I got in trouble for some stupid shit I did, and I didn't get to go to my 5th grade party. Fuck Mr. Smith. No, he wasn't a bad guy. I was doing some stupid shit.
Yeah, bro. I just find it appalling. Like powers, what's it called? Powers and checks and powers. Like, how is that? Oh, checks and balances. How is that a check and balance that's like fair to anyone as like we the people in the United States of America? How is that outweighing people, individuals?
Dude, I don't know if you know this fact. The $15 minimum wage increase, it passed in Florida, right? Last year. Floridians voted to increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Florida also voted Trump. It was a red state. Trump was not even for raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. That was a Bernie idea. So for some reason, people are going to vote for Trump, who is against their interests, while also voting to raise the minimum wage.
It's like they're trying to they want Trump to do the minimum wage thing, but if he can't, they still want Trump.
it's like they have us voting for people who don't represent us at all. Like
That
we're
too.
literally voting for people that don't want anything good to happen to us. Like we're voting against the goodness that we deserve. And like to tie this back to Virginia, because I want to hear what you think. Like the guy who lost, the Democrat. Let me pull up his name. Um, the guy who lost, named Terry McAuliffe. One of his ads did not talk about the minimum wage. It did not talk about healthcare. It did not talk about prescription drugs. It was only like, this guy likes Trump and Trump is bad and we can't have that happen again. So vote for me. And like clearly when you go down to the actual issues, like people agree with like the issues of the left, like legalizing marijuana and raising the minimum wage, you know?
Yeah, it's just like, how do we know that those people, well, if you're voting for someone, you think it's the right choice. So who is the one that's providing the disconnect of like information? Is it people's like understanding of what's going on? Or is it because the stories are told a different way, a certain way? Or is it because like there's such a vast amount of information to like actually use as evidence in an argument according to whoever? So I think if you can identify like where the disconnect is, bro, like
Mm.
that's important. And then
We're
how
Oh, my
the
bad.
disconnect happened. Like, is it a disconnect that's intentional, or is it a disconnect that like just has never been identified?
Are you talking about like the disconnect between the power and the people? Like
The
the
power
people
in
in
the
power?
people and like voting for people who don't represent us and and being let down continuously and getting used to the letdown of politics.
Mm-hmm. It does let people down, you
It's like an
know?
energy vampire. Like it's just moral decay. Like morality is low. Morality is just low, bro.
Yeah.
Team moral, not morality. Morality in politics is low because like there's always a scandal, there's always a story, there's always someone covering somebody up that shouldn't have been covering up for them. Just because that means they would have been they'll get covered up for something that happened or something that might happen. Like so everyone tied up in some sort of fucking conflict.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you keep your hands clean? And why does everyone try to keep their hands clean? Like there's something to be identified. There's an issue to be solved. People don't have clean water. People need food. People need something. Like people need to be paid more, healthcare benefits, like what's it called? What's the other word? What, oh yeah, retribution, bro. Like dead ass retributions.
Mm-hmm.
Just just seems like very plain logical thought, but like when it gets to actual problems being solved, where's the disconnect? Like, yeah, we actually still remember about that thing that never happened.
I think what we are doing on this channel is such a great way to spread, the goodness from the policies that we cherish to be like popular, because they're not going to get it from the media. And like you do a brilliant job at explaining so many of the ways and like why people are like following certain things that they shouldn't be really following. So like, yeah, this has been a fantastic like first mini episode.
I agree.
And
I agree.
I I want to thank all you guys for watching and listening.
For real. Appreciate y'all.
And I don't know if I should say it, but also might have some music on the way.
Oh yeah, I got a music video on the way. It's like it's a work in progress, but we'll see what it comes out to. Should be fun. I shot it myself, directed it, and of course I made the song. So between that and a whole bunch of other unreleased music, hopefully I'll let myself put something out soon.
I'm looking forward to it, bro. I really am.
Thanks, man.
Well,
I'm
thank
about
you
to go play
guys.
some guitar.
Hell yeah. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you all soon.
Peace.